Welcome to the Mobility Mindset. We're super excited to have you here today and talk about Canada, the healthcare system, and any other issues and future ahead for Canada.
Great. Looking forward to it.
So yeah, why don't we start with your background, how you got started, and yeah.
Sure. So I was born in Montreal, but when I was 7 years old, my dad's job was transferred to Toronto. That happened a lot because the economic situation and the political situation in Quebec was getting unstable. So a lot of people were moving out. But my mom and dad, my mom was from Barbados and my dad was from England, and they came and had met in Montreal. They loved Montreal. So they were not happy to leave it. But we moved here and we moved to Scarborough, and I tell people this, like Midland and Shepherd, and that was the northeast corner of Toronto. Now it's, like I said, it's almost halfway to downtown because Toronto's grown like incredibly. But that's when we moved up. And then, yeah, so I grew up here in Toronto and I went to French grade school and French high school in Toronto.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
And then did my university studies at University of Waterloo,
Oh, cool.
which is great. It's becoming such a world-renowned school on that. It's great. And to be from there, very proud of that.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about your mother.
Sure. So my mother was a nurse. She was born in Barbados, and when she was 17, she had written to away to go to school in England because back then in the Caribbean they had no universities, nothing. So if you wanted education, you had to go to England. It was like that for a lot of the Commonwealth. England was the place to go. She did her education and she studied and worked in England. She decided to try Canada. And I tell the story when she came to Canada and she got her first paycheck, she couldn't believe how much money it was. And she went and bought a really good coat and a sewing machine with one paycheck. She couldn't believe it. And then after that, my mom said, I love Canada. Canada, the best place in the world. I will never leave Canada. And she never did.
She's also been she kind of spearheaded and been a trailblazer in racial equality in Canada. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So my mom's case is what they call the precedent-setting case in Canadian history. In the 1960s, we had racism, overt racism. We still have structural racism here today, and it doesn't hurt to pretend it doesn't happen. But back then, it was far more aggressive and open. And my mom was a colored lady, and she went for a job as a nurse, and the guy just, no. And she took that company to court. What I tell people is that 12 years. And after 12 years, they're found guilty, and the fine is $25. People are shocked when they hear that. And it wasn't important for my mom, the money, but my mom set what they call in Canadian history, before the Charter of Rights and Freedoms even was put in place, she said that you're not allowed to discriminate based on race in employment. So you can't use employment laws now can say clearly you're not allowed to ever say to somebody you can't get the job based on race. That's my mom's case. So she was a precedent setter like that.
And like probably people don't know this, but like on her passing in 2017, Canada's parliamentary poet laureate even penned a poem in her honor. And I'd like to read a small excerpt from that. Given the evidence, Judge Marcel Gabouri had to find for the plaintiff, namely Gloria Baylis, he fined Hilton only a token amount. But the fact is, heroic was Mrs. Gloria Clark Baylis in being the face of Her Majesty the Queen versus the Queen Elizabeth Hotel. Obscene is the irony, but by taking on Hilton of Canada, Gloria Baylis took a historic step. Her bravura stand saw her triumph in Canada's first test case against racial prejudice in employment. Erase this glory? No, nevermore. She's not nameless, this heroine of equality, namely Gloria Baylis.
Thank you. That's a nice poem that Mr. Clark wrote in her honor.
It's truly a testament to her impactful legacy. What characteristics of hers have really stuck with you?
That's a great question. When you're brought up by your parents, we're all, how do I say, we're the children of our parents. So we learn from them, and their way of being, their way of living really gets inculcated into us. So I would say a few things for my mom. She stood up for herself. She stood up for her rights. And I really learned that you stand up for your rights. And my dad always supported my mom. So I learned that people that are fighting for the rights, you have to support them too. I learned that from my mom and my dad. And my mom was, it's my mom, so I'm very proud of her and that. when she got older, she sadly she got sick and got dementia before she passed. But I would go somewhere in the place and people say, "Hey Frank, you have to say hello to your mom." And I would try and say, "Listen, she now has dementia." She goes, "No, no." She had such an impact on this person's life. You have to tell her it's me, Joe Blow, whatever. Right? You tell her she'll never forget me because she changed my life. And I would say, okay, okay. And at first I tried to explain to people it doesn't work. And after a while I said, yeah, yeah, sure, I'll tell her. You know what I mean? And I would tell her she had dementia, but I would say, hey, mom, this person said to say hi. So I had seen just by my travels the impact that she had on people's lives. Just by the way she was always such a human person. I will give you a story if I can. This is a short one. So one time when I was in medical field, I went to Sunnybrook Hospital, a big hospital here, and I had to see the head of I was seeing people in neurosurgery. The head of neurosurgery comes, I want to talk to you. Okay, what? He says, I want you to say hello to your mom. Okay. He said, when I was just a first year student, they bring you into operating room. My mom was operating room nurse.
Oh,
But when they bring the students the first time, they're watching. Okay, who is looking at the operation getting like this? And he said, I went, and he says, your mom caught me? And she took me, sat me down in the corner, got me some water, said, don't worry, you're going to be okay. So, and he never forgot this. Now he's the head of the whole department. But he said, I want you to tell your mom that I said hello. I said, okay. That's an example of like the stories I would get, like that.
yeah, no, I mean, obviously you learned a lot in terms of the resilience and the persistence just that it takes. Like, how do you even fund a court case that goes all the way for 12 years? Like, how did she even
It's an amazing situation because this was a test case and the company was fighting it all the way, like for $25, And at one point, then they even went after the government, said, you can't even make these laws. It's against the law because we are a company. We should get to choose what we want to do, and you cannot do this. So even at one time, the Quebec government had to come in and help too and say, look, you can't do this because we're behind Ms. Baylis. So they were involved in the case too. Quite a complicated case. It went through 3 levels of appeals. It didn't go to a federal court appeal because by that time they said, okay, forget it. We're going to pay the fine. It was a long battle.
Yeah, I mean, and talk us through how you started Baylis Medical and, grew that from.
So that's a good point. So first of all, I did not start Baylis Medical. See, I have to tell people, we just talked about my mom. My mom started Baylis Medical, not me. And when I used to tell the story, sometimes people say, yes, your mom started, but your dad helped. And the first time I heard that question, I said, yeah. And then I heard it a few more times. And I realized that some people had a hard time believing a young black woman, well, she wasn't that young then, but a black woman could be the founder of the company. And I said, look, my dad helped. Like if my mom said, go to the post office and post this, he would do it. Like he helped like that or put this in the envelope. But my dad was engineered like me. But my dad did no business, zero business. He was a very good engineer, but forget about business. It was my mom, the entrepreneur. And I can tell you this, and you know it because you're a business person too. My mom had gone from 0 to 1.
Mhm.
And she had a vision because she was an operating room nurse. And she knew all the operatings, cutting people open that. And she saw what they call interventional medicine, using catheters to come and fix things. And she said, this is the future. This was her vision. Also, she had a very strong set of values. I was to learn years later that those values, now they call it patient-centric. And it was a PhD nurse that had written this terminology, patient-centric, which is that they're focused on the patient, not on the person buying, but what is good for the patient. That was a nurse, and my mom was a nurse. And she just brought that value. She never sat down and said, listen, everybody, we're going to be patient-centric. She never said it like that. But her whole value system was, are you doing what's right for the patient? Because if not, a good story, we hired a guy, he was a sales guy, Jose. We always laugh about this. After 3 months, he did something that might have saved us a bit of money, but my mom says not good for the patient. She calls him in, fired. And he's like panicking. He goes, Frank, I just got this job. I can't go back and tell my parents I got fired in 3 months. I said, listen, I know my mom. Your sales guy, go outside for 1 week selling, come back in a week. When she calmed down, say you're sorry, you'll never do it again. And she did. It's okay. You could have your job. But we tell that story because when she talked about looking after the patient, she meant it. She was not just saying, oh, we're patient centric. She said, you put that patient first and center. Now, today, every medical company goes, hey, we're patient centric. But that was not the case when she started. That's become a nomenclature now that people use. But for her, it was her value as a nurse, you see?
Well, let's give credit to you as well. You didn't really take it from 1 to 100. You took it from 1 to 1.7 billion. So she
Yeah.
through that.
Well, it's really important for me to underline this too. I didn't do it alone. This is one of the things that I really try and dispel, right? And that, hey, you did it, I did it. No, no way. It's not true. I have a great partner, an amazing partner, Chris Shaw, that I went to school with at University of Waterloo. And we started trying to be entrepreneurs even then and came out and I joined my mom, he joined my mom. There were three of us and we were importing and reselling these specialized catheters to avoid doing surgeries. And then at some point, my mom, what happened is she was importing this catheter from France. It was a very interesting story because I had a family friend called, you would understand, he wasn't real uncle, but he was my Uncle George. You know how you have, like, it's not your uncle, but he's your uncle. Okay, Uncle George. So he had a cousin in France that had developed this catheter to go in the brain to treat aneurysms. Because here, if you have a problem in your heart, we cut you open, your bladder, we cut you open. The middle of your brain, no, we can't cut you open and move things around. So if you had to bleed back then, the radiologist said, I'm sorry. And then what happened is there's a set of radiologists, they saw the bleeding and they had the catheter, said, maybe we could do something. And they started injecting glue or going into the brain and injecting glue or blocking off, trying to stop that. And there was a French doctor in France, that's where it was invented. He had moved to Quebec, which is French part of Canada, and said, look, they need someone to buy the catheter in France, bring it here, import it, get it approved and sell. That's how my mom started. And she said, I will do that because that's the future. And she was doing that. We joined. And then at a certain time, the guys in France were very difficult to deal with. And my mom said, look, you are Chris, our engineers. You developed the catheter. So I went to see the doctor. He says, Frank, this is peanut business. There's 5 of us in all of the Americas on this side of the ocean. There's 5 people that do this. It's so specialized. So I went to see my mom. I said, no, Mom, this is peanut business. Well, a company in Silicon Valley didn't think that way. And they started making the next version of that. And wouldn't you know, like 7 or 8 years later, they sold for 1.2 billion US dollars way back then. So I learned a lot of lessons. I tell people, doctors are very good at what they do, not so good at business, and listen to your mom. So I learned those two lessons. So that was the beginning of our journey in terms of we were importing and reselling, and at a certain point we decided to start manufacturing and developing our own. That was a real change. That was the beginning of our journey towards and becoming very big, if I could say that.
Yeah, and pretty much, how many years have you spent building the business?
So people don't know, but we've actually built and sold 5 times.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So this is like the latest one, which we sold our cardiology business in 2022 was the 5th time we sold the business.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So the first thing what we did is we were developing a system for chronic back pain. And I used to never be able to go to party or anything, tell people, what do you do? Because back pain, there's 5 people lined up. I have back pain. I said, listen, I'm not a doctor. I'm an engineer. I just make these systems. But anyhow, we had a system for treating chronic back pain that we developed. And we were very small back then. So we went to a company called Kimberly-Clark. You would know that. They had a healthcare division, said, we will represent you in the United States. Because we couldn't build a sales force. But if it goes good, we won the contract, we can buy you. Okay. So in the contract, we had like minimum they had to buy. So it gave us, like, for a few years, we knew exactly minimum sales. That allowed us to invest and do everything. But that was a good part of the contract. The bad part of the contract was when it came to buy, it was applied to how much the sales were. So they always sold as much as their quota. Never had a problem. But could they have sold double? Probably. But if they sold double when they came to buy us, the price would have gone up a lot more. Because the sales.
So they purposely just bought at the quota so that.
Well, they were buying and selling. They were not putting their whole sales force hard on.
Until they acquired.
Yeah, because we didn't. Well, that's okay. That's part of business. That was the way we did the deal. So that was the first one that we sold. And
In many such contracts, you don't really understand the long-term implication unless you kind of bid in it.
yeah. And at the time, for us, that was like, what had happened is we started off, my mom, me, then Chris, and then the company was growing and growing. And then my mom wanted to pull out or whatever. We didn't have the money because it's like the company's worth a lot, but I don't have the money to pay for this. So it was good when we sold it because then that business line, because then we could pay my mom off. She could retire. And also we did have everything we owned was tied up in the business. So I could take money, pay my house off, do things like that, and then take some of the pressure off of us. But we kept, like I tell everybody, we're going down the highway. It was going very good, 100 miles an hour, and I sell the engine. I said, okay, build a new engine very, very fast because we need another engine. So we were doing that. And then we had our second business we sold. When we started, people didn't know about research and development tax credits, SR&E tax credits, where everybody knows now, okay? And that same Uncle George, he worked for the government doing research and development reviews. And he said, you guys should get this for your company. We started doing it for our company. And then people say, hi, what are you doing? Can you help us? So we started help this guy. And then we said, Chris and I are entrepreneurs. Let's make business out of that.
Oh, interesting. So you started doing shred consulting.
Yeah. So we set up, we had an office in Montreal, Toronto, and Calgary. And we put in an ISO structure, a quality system. So almost all shreds are done the way we set it up. Because people learned how to do it. I then negotiated, you know that you can get a bank loan for shreds, right? Our company was the first in Canada to do that. And I set that up too, right? Everybody uses that program now, but I set up, and I used to go to bank after bank. I want to do this thing where I'm going to get this money back, and you give me, and they look at me like, huh? It was one after another. I remember this very well. And then I went to one guy, I said, I want to do this and get a loan. He goes, yeah, sure, we can do it. I said, like, okay, hang on. Did you understand what I said? He was a really nice guy. He's my friend still today. But like, they just said, yeah, I understand. You want to use this and this. And I go, yeah, that's what I want to do. But nobody had ever heard of it because we were the first in Canada to do it. Do you know what I mean? Now it's very well known. So we built that business up. And what happened is when we sold Kimberly-Clark, we always had we wanted to have like two things in case something went wrong, you know? And so when we sold the pain management business to Kimberly-Clark and we paid my mom off and we had money, then we said, you know what? We don't need this shred business anymore. Now we can go all in because it was like a backup. And we were always getting called by all the big firms wanted to buy this business.
The shred business.
Deloitte, Ernst & Young, Pricewaterhouse, they were always calling us.
They want to buy the clients essentially.
They want the whole business, right? Yeah. And so what happened was I came down one time to see Chris, and Chris says, this guy wants to meet us again from Ernst & Young. I want to talk about it. And I go, oh, it's the head of all Canada. And then I thought, you know what? We could sell this business now because it's a very different business, and we'd just grown organically. And we had like about 45 people in the organization, and it was not, we liked doing medical more, and we would have had to change to get bigger because it really is a partnership kind of thing. So we said, okay. So then we sold that one to Ernst & Young. And then Ernst & Young, the people that are there, a lot of them are partners at Ernst & Young now. And I can say that the way we had approached doing shred claims, even when the federal government started giving courses on how to do it, they were using some of our examples, like, can you see this and this, and that's how you do it. I said, oh, I wrote that. So it was interesting.
I mean, I don't think many people understand this, but like you literally, you and Chris and Gloria, you guys bootstrapped the company pretty much. You didn't raise external.
No, we didn't. Yeah.
At least not massive amounts, and basically build it from scratch. And one of the things that as an entrepreneur, every startup goes through is like oh shit, we're fucked moment.
Well, I went through a lot of those. Don't
come to your mind?
Yeah, for sure. Well, what happened with venture capital? I'm a little older than you. So I can explain it. So what happened with venture capital? It started in Silicon Valley, and back then when it first started, the guys that did venture capital, there was no venture capital even in Boston or Minneapolis. There's none. It was just Silicon Valley, and they said, "You want money? Get on the plane and see us. You got a great idea. We're not coming out to Brampton we're so busy." So it was very little venture capital. And then it started to grow. And now every country has venture capital, but there was zero in Canada. It was almost all in Silicon Valley. And two things happened. There was none in Canada, but there was this program called ACVIL. It's a provincial government program that we tried to develop something. And they gave us an investment on this one project. And man, I thought it was so hard because they're always, can you buy this piece from a Quebec manufacturer? And if it's not the right manufacturer, I should buy it from there. And I found that very, like, I felt like my hands were tied. And then the other thing I was doing when I was a young guy, anytime I met some business guy that was really good, I'd talk to him, try and learn from him. And they would say a lot of times, hey, if you're in a neighborhood, drop by. It's like a week later, I'd be driving. Hey, I'm in the neighborhood. Can I come by? Yeah, sure. And then I would walk in. You know, when you walk in, you see the factory, you see the way things are working. You're always learning. And there was this guy that I loved him. He was building the first wireless telemetry. So in hospitals now, you walk around, but before you couldn't walk around because you have to, I'm going to the bathroom, unplug everything, replug everything. So he was building that, and he was such a nice guy, and he was always really enthusiastic. I got a lot of energy out of him. Hey, Frank, look what I'm working on. Look at this, look at that. So one time I dropped in to see him, and he had just raised like $20 million, a lot of money back then. I dropped in to see him, see how it's going, and life had gone out of him. He says, like, I remember he goes, man, I'm just an employee. It was like a punch in the gut. Oh my God. So because I had like this wariness of venture capital, because of the kind of experience I had with the Quebec government, and then this guy, and then we were lucky because my mom had started as importer distributor. So we were making money by importing and distributing, and then we slowly started to change. And I remember I had the worst car in the parking lot, even my own business and that, but all the money was going back into development. And then I was not taking any money purposely. But as we grew and got stronger and better, like venture capitalists would call us, and I would always say, they say, do you need money in that? Because they could see we're doing really good now. And I would say, I said, look, I don't need any now, but maybe in 9 months. So can I call you in 9 months? Yeah, sure. Because if I ever got in trouble, I didn't want to say, hey, I'm in big trouble, help. I would say, oh yes, now we're ready for your investment. So I kind of like kicked the ball down. I never said no, but as people saw we were having a lot of success, they wanted to invest, but I tried to avoid it. And I understand you can't avoid it for all companies, but what I do tell a lot of young startup entrepreneurs, be very tight with your money. It's very easy to spend money, and you get a big check. Let's be honest, it's very validating. Someone gives you like, say, $5 million. Well, they really believe in you. And then you think, okay, I have a lot of money, and you start spending it. So
let's talk about politics and what got you into politics in the beginning. Like how did you, that's a pretty big switch.
Yeah, so we were going great, and I decided, I always had politics in the back of my mind.
Why is that?
It's a calling, like you're an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
You can't help if you're, you know what I mean? Like it's something that calls out to you. And I think people should respect what they're meant to do or what calls to them. So for me, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I always had this idea to go to government and become an MP. And that was an attraction, something I wanted to do. And I was 50 at the time. My kids had gone away to university. I told my partner, Chris, I'm going to go in politics. And he was not happy. He was really mad. He goes, we're doing good. This is a dumb idea. What are you doing this for? I said, I got to do it, man. I want to do it. So I was lucky enough to be elected from 2015 to 2019. And I'll be telling you, for me, it's a great honor. I represented my country. I was a member of parliament, and I consider it a great honor in that. And it was something that called to me to give back. And I encourage anybody, whether it's municipal, provincial, federal, if this calls to you, you should run. You should do it. There's no shame if you run and lose. But I have a great respect for people that want to do, whether it's business or whatever you want. If it calls to you, do it. I encourage you.
What would you say was your biggest accomplishment when you were running?
When I was running,
or when you were serving?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that there's a few things that I did that I think I'm proud of. I worked. There was like this wave of Islamophobia, like anti-Muslim wave, and my friends at the local mosque had come and talked to me, said, look, things are really getting out of hand. So I'm the person that brought petition E411, which was the anti-Muslim, against Islamophobia, not pro-Muslim, not pro-Muslim, but against Islamophobia, and trying to address that. And that led to Motion 103 and studies to say, take steps. Sadly, even though we were fighting it, that big tragedy happened in Quebec City where the man went and shot up the mosque. And then another tragedy happened here in London where a guy drove his truck into a family. So I'm a huge believer, and we talked about my mom's case of helping people standing up for their rights and that. And we tried to be a voice against Islamophobia, and I'm very proud of that. I'm also proud, like I was one of the founders of the Black Caucus. So we said, look, there's this kind of institutionalized racism against Black people. And we got together, myself, Greg Ferguson, Lee Chavez, Ahmed Hussein, a few others, and we went to the government and we got things done. We said, look, first of all, they recognized the UN Decade of People of African Descent. Mr. Morneau was a finance minister. He was really good, and he put Viola Desmond on a $10 bill. And then we also got real investments into Black entrepreneurship, because it's about wealth creation. Not just we want to fight racism, but we want to help the community build its own wealth. So I was really proud of that. And yeah, the accomplishments along those lines, if I look at it, yeah.
And so, you stepped down and went back into business, and now you are running for Liberal candidate and potentially Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. Like, why did you decide to run for Prime Minister?
So what I saw when I was there is that the system's not working. And I'm not a very partisan guy. I'm a liberal, but I can tell you, in my estimation, 80 to 85% of people are good people in politics, and they want what's right, what they believe is right for their country. And so I saw how we're wasting time. Business people don't like to waste time. I saw how we're shuffling things around, and I saw how the debate had really gone down, the quality. So I tried to make a change with two liberals, some NDP, some conservative, Green Party. I was wanting to be very multi-partisan, and we wrote a big pact called Motion 231 to try and change the system. I saw that the powers in charge don't really want to change the system. So I said, okay, I understand. And I said, I'm going to take a step back, but I don't give up. I said, when there's an opportunity, I'm going to try and come back in again and try and have this conversation with Canadians and tell them I can get the system working for us. I can. I haven't had a chance to get that out as much because it's just the way it is, getting your message out there. But that was really an impetus for me to go back and try and get the government working for Canadians more. Also, because I know business and I know the inner workings of government, I know what it takes to help companies like you. I know when we are helping you, and I know when we're hurting you. And I know that you're the wealth creators. You're the job creators. For us to have we need you guys to have a great, prosperous Canada. We need your entrepreneurs, businesses to be successful. So I know how to do that because I've lived it myself, but I've also been in government. So I really want to go in there and just really get things running, get the economy humming for all of us,
So, I mean, both of us have a background in healthcare, in the medical device space, and pretty much everyone who's watching has experienced the healthcare system in Canada, knows the good and the bad and the ugly, I guess. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the healthcare challenges in Canada. So health spending has reached 11% of GDP, yet outcomes like wait times have lagged. In 2023, the federal government decided to inject 46 billion over 10 years after a warning of a crisis with ER closures and surgical backlogs. GP to treatment has today a median wait time of 27.7 weeks. It's wild. While people think that the money will help, 66% believe that there are structural problems that are the root causes. What is your diagnosis of the situation and its root cause?
So, yeah, like the government announced $40+ billion and nobody said, oh, thank God, now it's fixed. Nobody said that. We didn't think that. It's like there's a fire and we're shoveling money in and they just got a bigger shovel, right? So what's happened in our system, the way I diagnose is that the system was designed in the 1960s when the general population, the baby boomers, were quite young. And it was designed for acute care, meaning something bad happened. You're walking along, you got hit by a truck. Oh my gosh, We can rush you in, fix you up, take care of you. Then over time, we have what we need, a chronic care. Because today, if you're unlucky, but you have heart disease, if you have diabetes, cancers, any of these chronic diseases, the system can still help you. We can keep you alive, keep you going, give you a quality of life, but you have to live with a chronic disease. And we're using the old system for this new need. As the baby boomers got older, as we got new technologies that allowed people to live longer. I'll give you an example. When I started in cardiology, there was no such thing as adult congenital cardiologists. There was pediatric congenital cardiologists, and maybe at best you lived to 2021. So they didn't bother getting adults because they didn't live long enough when they had a congenital heart problem. But now they can give them the whole life. So there's a whole section of people that now exist, doctors, to keep people alive well past their youth. So we're still using the old system for a new need. So it's not more money. It's changing the system. And I have a whole plan how to do that.
So yeah, let's jump into some of those potential things that you suggest. So, of course, we have one of the things that I mentioned was like the wait times. There's a shortage. How do you address that?
So right now, there's only 2 doors to come into the system. You're lucky enough and you have a doctor and he'll see or she'll see you on time. And if not, what do they tell you to do?
They say,
go to the emergency.
Don't tell me I told you this, but
Go,
walk into the ER.
Yeah. Everybody, so go. And what happens when you go to the emergency? You wait hours, 8, 9 hours. There's no service because it wasn't designed for that. So these are the problem. Only 2 doors. And then people say build bigger emergency. That's ridiculous because emergency should be emergency, but we're not. We're using it for all these chronic diseases, all these other things. So what I want to do is open more doors. And I want to open the door. It's already starting with pharmacists. It's called scope of practice. So pharmacists are trained to do this much, but they're allowed only to do this much. It's silly. We just need to let them do what they're trained to do. And so you have a lot of minor elements, needs. You can just go to the pharmacist. I was just speaking to a pharmacist today, and he said like they're trying to get now birth control, that they can prescribe it and do it. So they don't have to go through the whole system. So that's one door I want to open.
What would be some other examples that pharmacists can now take on?
All types of, I think there's like, depending on which province you're in, some can't do anything. Some can give you prescriptions for 12 or 13 types of ailments or more. So just let them do what they're trained to do. That's a huge thing. That's one. Number 2 is I want to take 6,000 nurses and train them to become nurse practitioners. And a normal roster for a doctor, say it's 1,250 or 1,500 patients. If we have 6,000 nurse practitioners, we say, we're not going to give you a lot of work, just 1,000 patients roster. Okay. That's 6 million people now that are covered. And we have 450,000 nurses in Canada. So can we take 6,000 and start training them up and then have them in what I call a continuous care center? So you need to see someone. Now you don't have a doctor. You don't have an emergency. Don't go to emergency. Leave emergency for emergency, okay? You don't have a doctor, but you go to continuous care center or you go to your pharmacist. There's 2 more doors. And then we don't have the crush on our system. Added to that, I've seen these amazing technologies develop right here in Ontario using artificial intelligence to support diagnosis. Amazing. And what it does is it takes all the paperwork that a doctor has to do away. So we're going to give every doctor 2 or 3 more hours a day. Added to that, I've seen other ones where they do this. Think of ChatGPT, but for your medical records. It exists. You may have medical record here at the pharmacy, and then you went to a hospital here, then your doctor's here. Imagine the old way was thinking, how are we going to put one huge database? No, that's going to be a boon, never going to work. But now they have systems that says, you know what, just let me go read. I don't need you to just tell me how to read here. Give me permission. I will go read everything in a split second, put it together and tell you. That exists today. We just need to put that to work now.
So let's talk about nurse practitioners, maybe to start with. So you say you would like to train 6,000 nurse practitioners. How does that actually work on the ground? Like, do you have to set up a new program that all of these colleges have to implement? Or is it something that nurses are already trained with?
So when you have if you're a nurse, you already have the base. We don't bring you up to nurse practitioner.
Okay.
So there are schools, and they're just
It's
getting
very big in the US, right?
exactly.
Right.
So for example, one of my friend's daughters wants to be a nurse practitioner, but she had to go to Texas to get trained.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, we can do it right here. We have some schools, but we're being very silly, trying to save a few dollars. Let us train, let us invest in these schools, let them do what they're good at, and let them open the doors a bit more. The foundation for any advanced society, you and I went to University of Waterloo, good technical school.
Mm-hmm.
You need good schools, and we're like squeezing our universities, like putting like this, the water. Like we should be investing in our universities. And what is to train 6,000? Is this a lot to ask for? You can't do it in one day. It's going to take like 5 or 6 years because it's got to get the schools up and running. It takes a couple of years to train them. But in 5 or 6 years, if I said to Canadian people, we're going to take all the pressure off. It doesn't cost, it's going to cost less. You don't have to worry about emergency for you go to emergency room. You can just go online, book an appointment, get your thing, whatever. And if you don't want to go there and you just need some regular ailments, go to see your pharmacist. Your local pharmacist can help you out. This is what I'm talking about. And then the medical record, we're not going to do it like this huge RFP and try and put one bit. It's not going to work. So what we do is we say, look, just like ChatGPT can go read out all these things,
Right.
we're just going to open the door for these things. And they have, these different databases. They have to have certain, what they call
So does that mean
interoperability.
every hospital's EMR, every clinic's EMR has to have a read access for what? Is that a software? Is that a federally controlled system?
That's what we need to do is we need to just put in, this is the rules. And if you don't have it at a certain time, we're going to kick you out. But it's doable. It's very doable. And they have already the protocols, HL7 protocols. And so their protocols exist for hospital language and these opening the doorway, if I can say that. So the guys doing it, they say that your records of an average person that's been in the system for a while, if you print them out and stack them, it's high as the Empire State Building. No one can read this. But now the system can. And you know where they're already selling it? In the United States. You know why? Because in the States, it's a business. So they go, you have 100,000 people in your system. Maybe these 20 people need a heart procedure. For them, that's money.
Yeah.
So we can tell you which ones to go. And
it's a predictive model as well.
And our system is only reactive now. What if it's predictive? The other thing is this. Because we don't have intelligent diagnostics, so a man, you're over 50, you have to go prostate. We don't care. You have to go. But maybe you're like really, we looked at your record, your background, your family history. You need to be checked every year. You come every 5 years. But now we say everybody the same. Same for breast cancers, prostate cancer, all these things. We just have very simplistic algorithms because we don't have this way. But think about how it can be so much more lighter on the system. So we're putting effort where we need to, not putting where we don't need to.
Like every Canadian loves the public, like the fact that there's free healthcare here. But of course, everybody understands these challenges as well. There's been this debate of, do we want to incorporate private sector delivery models alongside with the public system? Public opinion seems to be divided. 31% thinks more private would improve healthcare, while 44% fear that it might make things worse. Some are in favor as long as the patients don't pay out of pocket. It's around 56%. And support also is unclear when it's a two-tier system, where you have a free tier and then maybe a paid tier. Have you looked into any of these models, or what your thoughts are?
My thoughts are that the foundations of the Canada Health Act, that it's universal and that everybody has access is critical to me. I do not believe in making a two-tier system. It's kind of creeping in. I don't want to pretend it's not happening, but I want to have the system work for everybody. And a single payer is what we have. We are today, most doctors, family doctors, are private businesses. So people say, can we use private businesses? Well, we are. They're the doorway into the system. And majority of them are private practitioners. So they have to go rent an office. They have to hire a secretary, buy their furniture, and then they bill the government. So the government pays, but they're private. So I want to, but what's happened with medicine, it used to be a male-dominated profession, now it's becoming female-dominated. And this old way of operating, a lot of the doctors, new ones, they don't want to walk like that. They don't want to work in such a system because it's a lot, they don't want to be business people. They want to be doctors. So in the 60s, when they brought in the healthcare system, these doctors said, it's my business. You can't do this to me. I got a business. I got this. And said, okay, you can still be it, but we'll pay you. That's what happened. So we have that old system where most doctors don't want to be like that because they say, like, especially women, they say, I want to go have my children. I don't want to be like, I need colleagues. I need to work more collaboratively with people. So there's a huge hunger to fix the system, but I don't want to see two-tier system at all. And I don't think it's the answer anyways. I'm sure of it.
I see. So I think it's more of the fixing the existing free tier model and just making structural improvements. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's talk about maybe barriers to health innovation in Canada. Canada often struggles to get cutting edge medical devices and innovations to patients quickly. You're probably familiar with that yourself. Many Canadians travel abroad, often to get treatment and access to innovations which are unavailable in Canada often. Recent study of Canadian medtech innovators found that half felt that the device approval or eval process is a barrier. And, many end up focusing on the US or overseas market. In short, Canadian patients often wait longer for new treatments that are already available elsewhere. What are your thoughts on, is there something that we can do to fix this side of the health innovation side?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I look at companies like yours right here. You got Trexo. Look at what you're doing. It's amazing. And we should be supporting your company. It's a big spend. It's one of the biggest line items that the government spends. And I've been advocating this, I can tell you, 30, 40 years plus, to say the government should be using this spend also for economic value. So they should be looking at you not just able to help healthcare, but also to really contribute, hire people and contribute back to the economy, what I call intelligent procurement. And we don't do that. So I'm quite frustrated by that because, as you said, people have to go to the States and all that, but it should be that the government not only is making this technology available to Canadians, but a lot of times it's developed right here. It's developed here and we struggle to get it into our own hospitals.
Yeah, so what can we do? Like, I guess you already spoke about, implementing AI-based solutions and kind of bringing innovation in further. So do you have any ideas as part of your plan?
Sure. I mean, what we need to do is say, okay, look, this fundamental aspect is that the government realizes that comes to the realization that the spending power they have can be positive for the economy, not just the patients. And they have to stop looking at innovation as, oh, it's going to cost a lot of money. It's like if I said to you, don't get a cell phone, it costs money. It'll be much cheaper if you don't get a cell phone. You go, well, I'm not sure about that. Will I save money or will I be losing money? Or if I said to you, don't use Excel spreadsheet, just use the old paper and pencil. You don't need to buy a computer. You go, oh, is that saving me money or not? So I think there's been a real reticence to say everything's a cost instead of saying, no, this is really going to save people money if we do it the right way. So there's a whole mindset that has to change there.
Like, one of the things I think you've mentioned in the past is kind of streamlining approval and procurement process, like getting rid of some gatekeepers. Do you want to elaborate on that?
I think that Health Canada has to be a lot better at approving things, certainly at approving Canadian technology. And I don't know, I'm not sure where the reticence is, but it's not a written rule, but it's an unwritten rule. It's very rare that they'll be the first to approve anything in Canada.
Right.
So they want to see, is it approved in the States? Is it approved in Europe? Is it approved somewhere else? I think that's a big, big issue, so that we need to help Health Canada make better decisions and be able to make firmer decisions. Also, it's not well known, but in the FDA rules for medical device approvals and the European rules for medical device approvals, it says one of the jobs is to promote innovation.
Perfect.
That's not in the Canadian rules. I'd like to put it in there. So they say, hey, Health Canada, part of your job is to bring.
So working on the incentive.
Yeah, you're supposed to approve everything, but part of it is making sure good new technologies come through. They're saying, no, I'm keeping patients safe at all costs. I'll give you an example. When I was there is like a lot of drugs formulations for children that are not approved in Canada.
Hmm.
So what they do is the doctor says, okay, I need to give you this pill for your kid, but take a razor blade and try and cut it in four. This is ridiculous. What if the dad doesn't cut it right? And sometimes there's things in the adult formulation that are not good for kids. But then Health Canada says, well, we can't accept, there's been a studies, it's been approved in the United Kingdom and the United States for 20 years, and here's 20 studies. They go, well, we're not sure. You have to do another $5 million study here. And the company goes, I'm not going to do, I sell $1 million a year. I'm going to do a $5 million study. It's ridiculous. So then they say, well, we're keeping people safe. Are you really? You're not keeping people safe at all.
And in
You're not pushing innovation. You're not saying, let's get the innovation in. You're blocking it.
and on the safety side, yeah, you're actually potentially making it worse, especially on the pediatric side. Like so many innovations are not introduced in the pediatric side because sometimes their niche is a more niche market, and you end up with so much off-label use in pediatrics. Like
Absolutely.
Botox injections were off-label in pediatric, or still are off-label in the US, and it's kind of wild that you're actually making things more unsafe as a result of it.
Exactly. So they're saying we're making it safe. You're not making it safe. You're blocking access because they're saying like pediatrics, especially where there's a small market, and they say to get it approved, it's like they're approving Viagra. It's got a monster market or some heart disease thing. So they're not got that piece that's missing is you are also responsible for getting innovation into the system. I want to change Health Canada, say, hey, hang on, why isn't this innovations in the system? Well, blah, 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 blah. No. This is part of your mandate. So we have to change the mindset there.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And another thing I think you've talked about is fiscal responsibility, even on kind of the healthcare side. And you have the funding, but how do you attach that with accountability for results? What does that mean for you?
Well, I think that because we're using the wrong tools, and then what we do is give us the wait times, and we just start yelling at the hospital administrators or the doctors and that, we're not being smart again. So we have doctors, a lot of these experts, they have to spend 4 hours a day documenting stuff, and it's no longer needed. I've seen companies here in Toronto that the doctor sits down, puts the machine on, at the end, hits a button. It's not transcription, it's thought out. It's a chat GPT report that gets it. And they're like, I don't have to do any of this documentation anymore. That exists today now. It's very new, but we should be using that so that we say, okay, doctor, I want you to be a doctor. I don't want you to be secretary anymore. You hire engineers, but you don't want them to say your job here as an engineer is to file papers all day. No, because that's not your job. Then you're paying the guy or girl to do something they're not trained to do. That's what we're doing.
All right, let's talk about maybe switch gears to the talk of the hour, which is the tariffs and the US-Canada trade war that we seem to be entering in. Quickly, it's a very rapidly evolving situation. So as of today, which is Feb 27th, US has threatened a lot of tariffs. So we have 25% on all steel and aluminum, which is supposed to start March 12th. 25% on all Canadian imports, 10% on Canadian oil starting March 4th, 25% on automobiles, chips, pharmaceutical by April 2nd. I guess first is like, which of these we don't know about which of these will land, how much, when. So what's your best guess today as to like where we headed and which of these might stick and which will not?
So I wrote an article published the day before Trump became president, not the day after. And in the article I said, it's highly unlikely that he's going to put 25% on everything. I'd be shocked. Not to say anything is possible in life, but highly unlikely. I did say he will attack certain industries. The first one I said, steel. Why? Because I could predict what he's going to do. What we're doing wrong with Trump is every time he sends out a tweet, we're like freaking out. But what has he actually done? Today, actually nothing yet. He's going to do something on steel because they have overcapacity in the States.
So you think steel will stick?
I think it'll stick for a little while. But even steel, you see, what happens, tariffs are bad for everybody. But like, if I sell a steel rod for $100, it's okay, now it's $125. Okay. So the company that has overcapacity in the States, they say, okay, that customer come. I listen to the news too, though. That company not stupid. I know you now have to pay 125. So I say, I will sell to you for 120. I'm not going to give you 100. Why do I give you $100? I give you now have to pay $120. And so you don't like it, pay 125. And then you're going to go to these other customers too. Before it was $120. Now I'm sorry, price gone up, $120. So even if you have overcapacity, those companies are going to start pushing the price up. So you can't leave these tariffs on forever. And they have overcapacity in softwood lumber and dairy.
Which interestingly, today he did mention lumber as well. He didn't actually say tariff, but at least he brought
Yeah,
it up.
because these are areas that they've had overcapacity forever. So they've had overcapacity in steel, and Bethlehem Steel was one of the big companies was going to be bought by Japanese, and Biden blocked it because steel has an emotional attachment in terms of industry. Because when a company is young and growing, people make steel richest people in the country, Carnegie Mellon, this kind of stuff. But like say Tata in India, because people control steel when they're doing a lot of building. But then there's too much steel manufacturing because they stop building at that rate. So there's always overproduction. What happens in dairy is that they get less, the cows are all re-engineered, genetically modified, so they produce less number of cows, more milk, way more milk than the average cow produced, say, 50 years ago. And then in dairy, then I need another 2 cows, no problem. It's very easy to get, like, to have cows breed and get more. So all countries have dairy problem.
The automobile one is a bit hard to understand because a car is probably crossing the border like 5 to 10 times before it's actually manufactured. That seems strange for it to actually land.
I just was at a talk with Linamar, which is the biggest parts manufacturer in Ontario, Canada, I believe. And the lady there was saying she'd be shocked if they put it on there because it's not something you can just put on 25% and then it's very specialized parts. And so, I'll get it by tomorrow. The next place is possible. It could take 6 to 18 months to get it made and every part made. So she said it could happen, but she said I would be shocked.
There's an interesting historical context that maybe everybody doesn't know, but in 1936, it was actually Canada that imposed a very massive tariff on imported cars.
I did not know that either.
That's actually what prompted all the auto manufacturers to build their plants in Canada in the first place.
Okay, I did not know that. See, there you
go. So, I mean, that's kind of what led to this. And then we had the auto pact between US and Canada, which has led to today, but it's such a intertwined system today. It's
today
a complex system to unravel.
Yeah, and not only that, but they work in just in time. So if you don't get that part, then the whole factory slows down. So for Trump, I'm going to put 25% everything from Canada and everything from Mexico. The stock market would collapse. Inflation would shoot up. So he can't do it. I mean, he can do it. He can do anything, but I mean, it would be a unmitigated disaster for everybody.
Then help me understand. So let's say you have a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. Let's say I'm a manufacturer in the US. So if I build, let's say that's the only tariff. If I build, so steel and aluminum is more expensive. I can't get it from Canada. It gets more expensive everywhere. But then they might say, hey, if I was actually in Canada, I could buy the aluminum, manufacture it, and then ship it in for free, for no tariff. Would that not have the opposite?
Why would they ship it in for no tariff?
I mean, let's say the old tariff is only on steel and aluminum.
I mean, if
not
they
convert. Manufactured.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
If it's an auto part, isn't it incentivizing the auto manufacturer to move more into Canada?
Never thought of it that way. That's, but look, that's a great thought. Like I thought of that for aluminum cans, for example. I just think that it's very poorly thought out. I don't think it can last. Anytime you do tariffs, everybody loses. They're dumb. You can't say it any other way. And if you look at it, he's extracting all kinds of concessions without actually having done anything.
So take us into maybe the viewpoint of Donald Trump. What do you think is his goal and his mindset?
I think that if you look at the original tweet and what he's doing, First of all, it saddens me because we actually want the United States to be rich and powerful and democratic. It's good for Canada if United States, you want customers that have money. And sadly, he's making the United States poorer by the minute. He's destroying their reputation around the world. He's picking fights with everybody. And this has long-term consequences. With respect to his threat, 25% on everything from Canada. Well, almost 50% of our exports are energy. So if you put 25% on energy, say electricity from Quebec, who's that going to hurt? Now, the question is, who's the importer of record? So that person pays it. So is it Canada or the United States? But if he was to put 25% in it, I say, I'm not paying it. What are you going to do? I say, put 100%. Send me if you put 100% and you go tell all the people in New England they have to pay 100% more their tariff because you put a tariff. He said, no, I'll send you. I said, send me the bill. I ain't paying it. I'm going to shred it. Then what is he going to do? Turn off the electricity. Okay, I say, turn it off. Turn it off. This collapses your economy completely. So we're way too much giving him credit for what he says, what he can do. And we just need to calm down and stay. When he hits us, we hit him back. But it's not good for anybody. And it's not going to be good for Americans. It just, like you saw, even the threat, the stock market started to go down. Just the threat of it. And they said, no. So if I would go and make a deal with Mexicans and say, okay, that's it. You stop this, put 25% on everything, and we're going to fight you. Call his bluff, is that what I say?
Call his bluff. It's interesting because he cites illegal immigration and fentanyl, but less than 1% fentanyl comes from Canada, less than 1% illegal immigrants come from Canada.
I think 0.1%.
0.1, yeah.
Yeah, not even.
Yeah, it's not even.
So why does he do it? Because Donald Trump got elected. I show people that I keep it here. Oh, it's on my phone right over there. But I keep a chart there. And the number one thing that got him elected was immigration. Americans very upset with illegal immigration. So he sends out a tweet, I've got a big problem with Canada and Mexico on legal immigration. But did you know they had a big problem with Canada? No. Did the Americans know they had a big problem with Canada? No. And you know why? Because they don't. But this is Donald Trump. Big problem. So that in 6 months, you can say, I solved the problem with Canada. He's trying to divert attention instead of just dealing with, they do have an issue with the southern border. They don't have an issue with us. But he's trying to make it like an issue so he can then say, I solved it. That's part of how he plays his game. But if it was me, I would go and anything that concessions that we gave with respect to anything on the border, I would say myself, I would go see President Sheinbaum in Mexico and say, stop, we're taking everything off the table. There's no border, nothing. Till you start behaving right, we're going to let all these people, we don't have anybody going in, but Mexico says flood them in there. Then there's so much stuff Mexico can do. You see, when they have their crops, it's all picked by temporary foreign workers. If they don't show up for 4 weeks, the crop rots. So you could say, like, you know what? We're going to stop everybody going across the border. And then Trump will have all these farmers freaking out. So we don't need to be afraid of Trump at all. We just need to call his bluff and then say, okay, just do it.
I think a common phrase that seems to be taking effect is don't go by what Trump says, go by what he does.
Yeah, there's a good phrase that I have it there, I'll show you later, but that they said the problem with the average person is that we take him literally, but we don't take him seriously. Where his supporters take him seriously, but they don't take him literally. So we think 25%, that's just Trump being Trump, shooting his mouth off, right? But nobody thinks he's going to do that. It's ridiculous to do it. But we all, you know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, and it's a bit of a strategy of getting maximum attention.
When you think about it, look what he's saying. If it's 51st state, there's no border. It's gone. He says there's a big problem with the border. Well, you want it, then you say you got to make it stronger, but then want to get rid of it. I mean, it's idiotic what he's saying.
But it gets maximum focus and attention on the situation by having a very extravagant claim upfront.
Exactly. I would agree with you.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You suspect that some tariffs will stick at this point.
They'll come with some, but it won't last because it hurts his economy, even small tariffs,
Walk us through how it impacts Canadian economy. I think everybody's talking about, and rightfully so, tit for tat, we're going to hit it back. just as hard. But from a macroeconomic point of view, what does it really mean?
Well, it depends what we have to take out. Like you want to get stuff like jam that we make here and we don't, so you don't get your favorite jam from the States or that you can get from Europe or Mexico, some things like that. So the best thing would be to have products that wine, so you don't get to buy American wine. Is it the end of the world? No. You buy wine from France or Spain, wherever. So you want to target things that hurt them completely and don't really hurt us. And they sell us a lot more finished goods than we sell them. So keep in mind that number, almost 50% is energy. So he's very limited at what he can tax.
Yeah, I think I like your take on kind of don't get into over panic state with the
Yeah,
situation. And I think another thing that I would like to maybe touch on, you already touched on AI a little bit, but we talked about healthcare innovation. AI really is, one of the biggest, this is one of the biggest revolutions in our
incredible.
lifetimes. Canada is seen as an AI research powerhouse. We've had pioneers like Jeffrey Hinton, Joshua Bengio, truly godfathers of modern AI. We have an amazing AI talent. So that's really not the problem, but they don't tend to stick. There's a bit of a brain drain almost that happens. Is there something that can be done? It's partly is with other startups too. The capital is in the States, your biggest customers in the States. So it's natural to try to go into the States and migrate there. So is there something that on a federal level that you can do to promote startups and whether AI or other to kind of stay here for more?
I think proper investments, there's certain baseline things that we should do too, which is keep our tax rate low so people don't get like, my gosh, I'm paying so much more taxes here. We have a better lifestyle here because we have healthcare systems. We don't have problems with guns. Keep in mind, more than once a week, someone goes and shoots up a school in the States. We kind of forget these stats, right? So we are Canadian. We are not American. I have all respect for Americans, but we don't want their life. But we need to make it at least decent for our businesses or entrepreneurs to want to stay here. And I think they'll pay a bit more. But if we say like it's so much more, your taxes are 3 times more, people say can't buy a house because it's too much. So we need to keep the cost of living, get it back under control so that people want to stay here. And they do want to stay here.
Canada actually announced launch of the Canadian Artificial Intelligence Safety Institute and also the first national AI strategy, which was pretty much first in the world. Um, are there other things that we can do on building our AI strategy?
Absolutely. Like we just talked about those 2 examples I gave you in healthcare. We should be deploying them right now. We should be becoming the customer of those AI applications right now. A couple months ago, FDA passed its 1,000th AI product approved. That's how fast it's coming in healthcare. But we should be using those companies I gave you. We should use them as an example and say, look, let's invest in them. Let's become their customers as opposed to just giving them money and that say, look, let's buy these products. Look at your company, Trexo. Let's buy these. We have the needs right here in Canada. Let's support your company and support our patients. It's a double win. That's what we're not doing. That's the mindset that has to change.
Another big input for AI is, of course, energy. The marginal cost of energy really matters. We've had a challenge in terms of really building and expanding our energy base. What are your thoughts on what we can do?
So yeah, I have a whole energy security plan and it involves a lot of things. First of all, it involved using 2 gas pipelines, building 2 gas planes, one to the East Coast, one to the West Coast to supply Europe and Asia. And that will diversify us away from the States. It's good for our economy and it's good for the environment because those countries that are using oil or coal can now come off that. There's still problems with gas, but it's much better. And maybe we can even develop technologies to do smokestack, recapture carbon. There's a lot of stuff we should be doing, but that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of my security plan is to start moving into small and medium, small modular reactors, SMRs, because Canada used to be a world leader in nuclear energy with our CANDU reactors. And some people are afraid of nuclear and that, but done right, this can be a super safe technology. Not only that, but some of these SMRs are using the old rods from big reactors and they can use them. And what that does is it takes down the half-life that is radioactive from maybe like 5,000 years to 500 years. So it can be environmentally friendly, using up old rods and producing energy.
Plus the newer designs, the 3.0, 4.0 type of designs, they simply cannot have a very bad leak, essentially. They're
The way they're
designed
designed.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's like a lot of these things, people find it hard to believe. A lot of these things were designed when they had slide rules. They didn't even have calculators. That's how long it's been around. So we got to keep that in mind. So yes, there's been some catastrophic dangers, but we need to implement these type of technologies to address the needs of the future. We need to get onto it now. We haven't been doing that, but this is a wonderful opportunity for Canada to be leaders again.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, one thing that maybe people are not aware of is that you're also an actor on the side as well as a producer. Do you want to maybe tell us a
Sure,
bit about
sure.
that?
So everybody has an artistic outlet. I'm sure you have one that I don't know what yours is. What is yours?
I don't know if I have one.
Uh,
uh, yeah, I think mine is more outlet is more like video games and kind of looking at the creative side of that.
yeah, I love movies. I love movie making. So I've made movies with my producer there. We produced 3 feature films. I've acted in each one of them, small roles, but I have got my actor union card. So I'm very proud of that. And I love making movies. I write the storylines too. And we just produced also a documentary. So the documentary is on CBC Gems. One of our movies, Generation Wolf, is on Amazon Prime. This is my artistic outlet. I love making movies. I love watching movies, good movies, that is. And yeah,
So you're running for prime minister, but are you a politician?
that's an interesting question. I would say that I put in a lot of ideas forward. One of the ideas I put forward is term limits. I'm a big believer in term limits. Why? Because I want us to go back to the way the system was designed, which is it wasn't designed for career politicians. So to answer your question, am I a politician? Absolutely, I would be a politician in the sense if I went and got elected. But the connotation when people say, are you a politician, is right away, are you a career politician? And I actually want to get rid of that. I do not want us to have any career politicians, myself included, because what should happen is, let's say we're making laws on healthcare or how do we really help people with disabilities. You, from your experience in that, have something really good to contribute to that discussion. So if you're elected, you can say, listen, let me tell you, when I was doing my business, this can help, that can help. You contribute. But now, let's say you've been elected, you walk out of school, you've been elected 25 years. What do you know other than how to get reelected again? What do you know about fisheries or about mining or about farming or about auto parts manufacturing or about anything, medical systems, the doctors of that? So what I want to do is have people come, contribute, and leave. So I am a politician in the sense that I've been elected once and I'm running again, but I'm not a politician in the sense of how people think of a politician, that this career person. So it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but that's how I'd say it.
So you're looking to put term limits on the prime minister role, or
So I want senators 10 years maximum. After 10 years, first of all, you have to leave at 75, but let's say you're there before. You come, after 10 years, you make space for someone else. You're gone. For members of parliament, all of us, after 10 years, the way our system works, you may be like, still your 10th year, you have 3 or 4 more years. You're not kicked out, but after you pass the 10-year mark, you're not allowed to run for at least another 10 years. You must go away. Go away and then do something else. And then if you really love it, come back. But not like you lost election for 4 years and you run again. No, go away, learn something, come back with something to offer, contribute, go. Like, look at me. I want to work on 3 things. Get the economy going. Okay, but that's what I do. I'm a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to help businesses. I know how to help them. I know the government. I know that. So that's one I want to do. Second one I want to do is healthcare. 40 years in the healthcare business. I've seen doctors, nurse technicians, hospital administrators, policymakers, government agencies. I've seen the whole system. I know how to make it better. We talked about that. And the last thing I want to do is modernize the government. I'm an engineer, so I see it. Okay, wow. What are we doing this? Like, come on. But oh my God, let's get with the new processes. So I see all that opportunity. But let's say I did all that, Frank. It's time to move on. Even me, you've contributed what you're good at, but now there's other needs. And sadly, I see far too many that want to hold on forever. And they may even be good, but they've contributed, they've done their part, and it's time to move on. So yeah.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, Frank
Well,
Baylis.
thank you very much, Manmeet. I really enjoyed it. Great conversation, all that. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me
Yeah.
here.